Welcome to another episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast, brought to you by Genucel. We thank them for their sponsorship. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. You won't want to miss today's. Her name has been all over the news, and she joins us. She's a friend of mine. We have something in common. We both worked in sports. Sage Steele, former anchor on ESPN, joins us next.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
Well, if you haven't heard of Sage Steele, it won't be long before you do. She is a former anchor from ESPN, worked on all the major sports, golf, NBA, NFL. She covered a little bit of everything and then found herself in a bit of controversial hot water. We're going to go through her story. She recently reached a settlement with ESPN, but she's allowed to say whatever she wants. That was part of her settlement. So we're going to talk. We're going to explain exactly what happened at ESPN that got her into these hot waters, if you will. And some of it may really, really surprise you. I'm excited to speak with my good friend, Sage Steele, next. But first, do you still have that dark spot on your face that's been bothering you, or the ones on your hands, your chest, your neck? Genucel is here to help. You can watch those spots disappear safely, quickly in 3 minutes. Introducing the Genucel Dark Spot Corrector, 3-step, 3-minute dark spot luxury system. And it does exactly what it sounds like. By using their Cristal's world famous microdermabrasion before the dark spot corrector and finishing with a touch of the collagen building Genucel XV, you'll see the dark spots disappear before your eyes instantly, smoothly, luxuriously. What you're watching on the screen are real results in just a couple of minutes. I mean, it's incredible, but don't take my word for it. If you're not blown away with the result, you'll get 100% of your money back. No questions asked, free shipping, free returns. So go to genucel.com/Michele now, order the new dark spot treatment system today, and say goodbye to those annoying spots tomorrow. Genucel.com/Michele. But there's more. All 3 products are included in Genucel's most popular package for August. So you get your Genucel bags and puffiness serum also included, all for 70% off. Experience the luxury and effectiveness of Genucel. Order now. Watch the dark spots go away in 3 minutes. 70% off while supplies last. Genucel.com/Michele with 1L. GENUCEL.com/Michele. Genucel.com/MICHELE. Up next, Sage Steele. Sage Steele joins us. I mean, really just days after settling with ESPN and leaving the network she had been known for, and they had been known for her. And here she is. It's great to see you, my friend.
I'm so happy to see you, Michele.
Likewise. When did you start working at ESPN?
2007. And I was thinking about this the other day because my kids were 11 months old, 2 and 4. And now they're 17, 19, and 21. So this is all they've ever known is me
right
at ESPN, living in Connecticut. And so there's a lot of changes going on right now, a lot of interesting conversations in the house.
I bet. I can't believe you started with 3 kids that small.
I can't either.
That is, yeah. Why don't we just, have 3 little ones and then just start a job at a sports network? You remember your first day on the job, and I'd love to hear, for the listeners to hear the story, because what a lot of people don't realize is how you get put through a meat grinder, and everyone has a bad early moment. I've got a list of them, Sage, but let's hear your first day at ESPN.
Definitely the worst. My worst day at ESPN was my first day, and I wasn't supposed to be on the air for like another month of training that was supposed to take place, and Neil Everett called in sick. We love Neil. And he just was suddenly ill. And they said, hey, you're here training and observing Jay Harris. And so they said, well, you do the 6 p.m. Sports Center. Michele, I knew I wasn't ready. Like, I totally knew. But what do? You say no?
You can't.
Of course not. You got to go. The problem is that it was the first Thursday of the men's NCAA basketball tournament. And, the day that men across the country call in sick to watch all of the games.
Or they schedule their vasectomies for that weekend.
Exactly, with the frozen peas. Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what Neil did that day. No, I'm kidding. But honestly, it was that first day, and it was the 6 p.m. Sports Center prime time, and a 1-hour show went, that rundown went out the window, and it was extended to 2 hours and 45 minutes of chaos. And that's a hard show when you're a vet, much less when it's your first day. Everything's a hard show at ESPN. I mean, it's so highly produced. We have the best, sounds weird. They have the best crews. So first day, and I walked in there clueless, and I'd never met Dick Vitale or Digger Phelps. And the segment did not go well. And Dick gave me a hard time, and I cussed him out, and I had to ask for forgiveness later. And then Digger was like, "What the hell's going on around here?" And yelling and screaming. I looked at him. I was like, "Thank you. It's not just."
Yeah.
I got off the set, and Jay Harris, God bless him, he just hugged me because there were tears. And the bosses called me in, and some bosses said things that I will never forget and always use as motivation. And another one was incredible and really saved me because it was spiraling downhill quickly on my very first day. What he said and owned the mistake that they'd made to put me in that position, that actually saved me. It's the only thing that saved me because it took about 2 years to get my confidence out of the toilet. And I guess I can laugh about that day now because I obviously survived, but it was devastating.
I can't underscore enough to people how much grit and thick skin one needs to endure this profession. Because every mistake you make is made in front of a sports network audience. Everyone sees it. There are critics who will write about it. There are moments that just absolutely gouge your confidence, but obviously you survive. You are a survivor. Things seem to change in sports in general. And I guess at ESPN, what was sort of the first, because then you just grew, you blossomed, I don't even remember that. So for whatever it's worth, Sage, I don't remember your mistake on the air. But you blossomed, you grew, you came into being this, everyone knew your name. And so, but then these weird speed bumps started popping up. When did you notice that maybe there was something awry between you and the network?
There were a couple of moments in hindsight. Now I can look back and say, oh, that was a red flag. This one was pretty obvious, though, and this is in 2016. I was hosting NBA Countdown and had moved my family out to the West Coast, to Scottsdale, Arizona, to be closer to our Los Angeles studios. They didn't want to bring 3 teenagers to LA. So, and I was working Thursday to Sunday, so I would just hop over on the plane, 45 minutes to Burbank. But I suddenly got a call in August of, it's exactly 7 years ago, right? August of 2016 saying, we need you to come out to New York and meet with John Skipper, the president of the network at the time. And I didn't know why. My agent and I, Nick Kahn, at the time didn't know why. At least we were told that they didn't know why. And went out there, and long story short, they told me that they were removing me from NBA Countdown. I was devastated because I had heard nothing but good things, and we'd made a lot of progress despite some show changes after that first season when Bill Simmons was there. And that's a story for a chapter in the book. But survived that.
I can't wait for your book.
Let me tell you, there won't be coffee in this. There'll be something else in this when it's being written. Basically, I couldn't understand why. I'm like, what did I do?
What did they tell you? What was their reasoning?
We were at a lunch, and it was John Skipper and Connor Shell, who's no longer with the network either. And they started to say, hey, we have this wonderful idea. We want you to host sports around the road, and you can do the Masters and the World Series and the still NBA Finals and the Super Bowl, and be our lead host for sports around the road across the country. This is what we want you to do. And I said, but what about the NBA? And they said, well, we're not sure. We're going to make some changes there, but this is what we want for you. And it sounded great. And then I said, I need you to answer a question. What did I do or not do? Why are you making this change? And they wouldn't answer. I looked at Connor because he was the one that was making the decision, I was told. And he had no answer. And then Skipper looked at me and said, here's what he's trying to say. We just are making some changes, and a lot of things are up in the air. And I looked at him, and I recapped a story from my very first day on NBA Countdown, where it was a huge meeting at the ABC offices in New York. with everybody, the entire crew, producers, all of the head bosses at ESPN, and went into what that meeting was like and how, hey, you're great and come on in, and oh, we have this Bill Simmons, and we'll talk about all this, but just good luck and go. And that was in October of 2013, and that was the last I ever heard from any of those bosses. And so 3 years later, when I had been kind of dumped out in Los Angeles, and 3 years later, to just be plucked off of it, and then a couple months later saying, we're going to have to move your family back to the East Coast and come back to Sports Center and back to, there was just so much confusion. They ended up putting Michelle Beadle on the show. I'd known for a while that there were some relationships kind of in the background that were working against me, and friendships that I didn't know about. And they made that change, and she was on for a couple of years and then made some changes, then she was gone. So there's been a lot of things in hindsight that I look back and go, oh my goodness, I should have known. But I was naive. But that was the first thing that was a personal thing, and that really, really affected my family and some of the promises that they had made. So that was devastating. But I will say this till the day I die, Michelle. Every one of these things has happened for a reason. Every one of these things were the right thing for me now in hindsight. I wouldn't change a thing, even the things that really ticked me off. And there's a lot more detail that someday I'll share.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it, because I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't have begun to find the strength and the voice that I have now. It just took a lot of crap along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, some of it so publicly, which is the part of it that really irks me. And, look, I worked at ESPN for a time. I saw the politics at work there, and the behind the scenes friendships that, were better for some than for others. And we all know that there's politics in television. It's in every company, really. But unfortunately, in television, it can impact you in such a public way. And that's what you sign up for. But
Yeah.
You're right. You are stronger for it now. There was I want to get to the Jay Cutler podcast, because I think this was so benign, the things that you said, but obviously your network did not. So you get invited on Jay Cutler's show. Jay Cutler, for people who don't know, former NFL quarterback. What did you guys talk about that inflamed ESPN so much?
Well, I guess it depends on when you ask, because at first, the biggest issue was my comments on the vaccine mandate. So this is 2 years ago. This is September of 21. And, we had all gotten an email and many reminders about the requirement that we were vaccinated. And I was not happy. Many were not happy. So I'm not alone with that, for sure. But I had waited until the very last second to get it. Like the last day that I could have gotten the vaccine in order to be fully vaccinated by their deadline, September 30th. I waited because I wasn't going to do it. I just was scared. And all I wanted was just more information and more time and more research, because this thing had been shoved down our throats so quickly. And as a mother as well, and with 3 kids, but 2 daughters, and we don't know what this means for reproductive systems. Like
Right.
I just didn't want to. And so that was the first thing when I said, I made it very clear. I said, listen, I respect everybody's opinions. The vast majority of my family, probably 98%, is vaccinated. And so I respect everybody's opinions. For me, I didn't want it, and I didn't want to be told that I had to do something to my body that I wasn't okay with, period. But I had to do it in order to keep my job, a job that I absolutely loved until the very last day I was on the air a couple of weeks ago. And a job that I needed as the, sole provider. I'm divorced, and their father's certainly here in town and in the picture, but it's 100% financially on me. So I had to have this job, Michelle, and I believe they knew that. So I just was honest, and I just said, to each his own. Here's the thing: I had come directly from getting the shot. Like I had sprinted from the stupid grocery store parking lot home and flipped up the laptop on my the thing on my laptop to do the Zoom with Jay, and I had forgotten there was a Band-Aid on my shoulder. Like I was rushing, and I was mad, and I'd been emotional that I had to get it. So I just said, listen, I think it's sick and scary for any company to mandate this, but Disney is a global company. I was not surprised. They were one of many. But I still thought it was wrong, and I complied. And I thought the fact that I was complying, I could still have an opinion because I'm following the rules, but apparently not.
Apparently that's going out the window, and you're not alone. You weren't alone. And in retrospect, I think there are a lot of people who don't care what vaccine comes out next. They don't want to get it.
Yeah.
They don't want to be compelled to put a needle in their body and inject in, a product for which the makers are not liable if there's any issue with it. They don't.
That's the scary part.
It is. That there's no liability for Pfizer, for Moderna, for anyone if there's a vaccine injury.
And how about the fact that we know it doesn't prevent you from receiving it or transmitting it.
Correct.
We know that the masks don't work. So for all these people who said, follow the science for all this time, and at first we all were, okay, well, I'll do whatever you say. Keep my neighbors safe, my family safe, my kids safe, you safe. We know now by listening to their science that none of it works.
Right.
So therefore, I don't want it. Leave me alone. Stay away from me. If you want to take 10 of them and wear 16 masks on the plane, go for it. I might laugh at you a little bit under my breath, but that's your right. But leave me alone and leave my kids alone and leave my family alone.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that feel compelled these days. And that was certainly the beginning of it, and the masks as well. And, these winds of change we're hearing right now that, there might be a second wave or a new version of the bug. So we've got to do another. People their guard is up, and as it should be. And we should not be compelled to do anything like this ever again. And I hope that's the lesson learned.
And the timing is not accidental, in my opinion. The fact that Fauci's now out of his basement again and talking, and he's being interviewed again, Michelle, I cannot, and I will not. As far as trusting, that's the problem. I think so many of the American people have lost trust in what they say. And I was one that never questioned doctors. I don't like that. That's how I used to be. I didn't question anybody. I just was like, okay, they're more educated than me. And absolutely. And unfortunately, this has made many people question. And you know what? Good. It's important. And now I think many of us will never go back to that. And I think that if these things are forced and the lockdowns come again, there's going to be a very, very different reaction from across the country. And I don't think it has anything to do with politics. It shouldn't. It probably does for some. For me, it's not about that. It has nothing to do with politics. It's about right and wrong.
And freedom, and the freedom over your own body. Everyone wants choice. Well, we want choices about shots too. Another thing that you and I have in common is we both participated at The View. I did. I did it about a year or so ago. You did it prior to. You were there when Barbara Walters was still there. And how many times did you do that show?
4 times.
4 times. I probably did it 5 or 6, but we're both veterans of this thing. You got shoved by Barbara Walters?
I'm laughing at what that turned into because, when I was talking to Megyn Kelly, it was just a funny comment I had made in between, like, and then she shut. Yes. I mean, Barbara didn't like what I had said, and it was all about, race stuff, and she didn't like that I chose to really claim both my white mom's side and my black dad's side. And, but yeah, I did. The thing is, I wasn't saying, then I see this headline, I think it was in Variety, and they're like, Sage Steele says Barbara Walters assaulted her. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why people don't trust the media, because you make crazy headlines for clicks. I never said. I was laughing about it. I mean, she was testy all the way up to the end, and it was an honor to be on with all of them. I'm going to tell you, Whoopi was so nice to me. Jenny McCarthy was great to me. I love her. I respect her. By the way, I talked to Jenny McCarthy 10, 15 years ago about vaccines, right? Yeah. Shepard was wonderful. Like, I loved that. They were so kind to me, even with that situation. But I was laughing about it, and people make it this big. And you're talking about a woman who's no longer here, and you're accusing her. Get a life.
Yeah.
Stop it. It was funny. A lot of people witnessed it. It was funny. I thought, this woman and I laughed, and I was like, I wish I'd done on video. It's kind of cool.
It's I mean, that's like a notch in your belt, of things that that's a good piece of scar tissue right there. It's interesting. You were on with a very different cast. Yeah. I was on with the current cast, and it wasn't necessarily a happy place for someone like me. So it's weird.
I remember watching it, and I remember my chest tightening up for you. Not that you needed that from me, but I remember just on a much lesser level how I felt with that conversation about race with Barbara, and feeling like, oh my gosh. But with you, I mean, you walked into the lion's den, and I just felt upset because you couldn't even finish a sentence, and you were being interrupted.
It's hard to do that on that set, you know.
It's intentional, and then they incite the crowd, but I always laughed at the title of the show and the irony, because they actually don't want your view unless you believe like they do. So the hypocrisy, I'm blown away, and I hadn't been on it since 2014, and that's when all this happened. And so, listen, they never asked me. They never asked me after that. And it's probably not an accident. And that's okay.
You know what? It bothers me. Race is such a massive issue right now. And I think it has been since 2016, and then 2020 with the George Floyd thing. It sort of ballooned again into another whole level stratosphere, right?
Yeah.
But like you just said, you're from a remarkable family. Your dad, your mom is white, your dad is black. And so Barbara Walters asked you something like, well, on a census form, what would you check? What the hell kind of question is that? I mean, what was your inner reaction to just that question?
I don't know how well I handled it. I just was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I haven't filled out a census form in a really long time. I don't even know what the options are, but I would check both or none. I'm not going to be forced to choose. I'll say this: in the makeup room right before, Sherry had come to me and said, hey, I was reading about the biracial and the importance of you, claiming that. And do you mind if we ask about it? I was like, no, sure. And again, she was wonderful. Yeah. And I said, sure, of course. Like, why wouldn't I talk about that? So I didn't know it was going there. And that was Barbara's specific question. And I just was in awe that it was a problem. She's the one that brought up Barack Obama, not me. Right. She's like, well, the president identifies as black. And I'm like, well, good for him. You do. Yeah. I don't care. And then I did say the joke that I've used, and I don't know how funny it is, but I thought it was clever. I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure my white mom was there the day I was born. So I really think she's important too. And honestly, I'll never stop saying this. I'm the luckiest person alive, I think, one of many, of course, but because I had the best of both worlds. I grew up with the most beautifully blended family, knowing that they all loved me equally, white, black, like it just didn't matter. We have pictures from our family reunions back in the day, our pre-COVID days, when we'd all get together and there'd be neighbors and friends, but all the family. And if you didn't know us and you walked by the picture, you'd be like, I don't understand who belongs with whom. And there's, more black men than white women, like all the kids, and a couple were adopted, and we were a melting pot. Isn't that America? Isn't that what we want? Isn't that what we are so proud of in this country? And I don't know why she felt the need at that time to say, well, this is how and the president does this. That's his choice. Yeah. And I do think it's interesting how he chose, despite how he was raised. I mean, he wrote a book on his father and him not being there when he was a kid. It broke my heart. It breaks my heart that 70% of African-American kids are born without to a single mother, without a father that's fully present. That's something that I'm very passionate about and I want to talk more about, and the why behind it, and how do we help and how do we fix it. But to not have the conversation and to silence people because they don't identify how you think they should, you're actually the problem.
Yeah. It's ironic, isn't it? Or is that the right word? It's just freaking hypocritical that the tolerant left are the first ones to bash you when you disagree with them. They are really tolerant of you if you agree with them. But if you don't, look out. They're going to try to shut you up, shut you down, whatever. But yeah, for Barbara Walters, and it's disappointing for a journalist of her caliber to say, well, Barack Obama identifies as black. And you're right. It's like, where was his dad? But you also said, hey, let him be him. I'm me. What I again don't understand what was wrong with that, but you got you got attacked for that. And I just, again, it just displays this hypocrisy. If you
I
had
was
said it the other
devastated.
way around, no one would have had a problem with it.
Oh my gosh, if I had said any of those things differently on that podcast with Jay Cutler, I would still be working at ESPN. You know what
Do you
I
believe
mean?
that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I had said, all you anti-vaxxers out there, shame on you. Get that shot. Protect each other. Really? I feel like I would have been celebrated by my company. If I had said, listen, no offense to my white mom, but the plight of the black man, woman, absolutely. I talked, the other thing, that lowest in the totem pole, I guess, depending on who you ask in the company, was comments about women. And he was asked about how the industry had changed through the years with women in locker rooms, et cetera. I graduated from college in 1995. I was always the only woman in NFL, NBA locker rooms for years. I didn't care. I was proud of it, and it actually made me better because I knew that when I spoke up while interviewing Shannon Sharpe or Ray Lewis or Reggie Miller or whoever it was, my voice was going to sound different than all of my peers. So when I spoke, I better make it good. I better have done my homework. And so it made me better. And I was, for the most part, treated great by everybody. But I did say, because, oh, by the way, these are conversations I have with my daughters who are 21 and 17. And we as women are very smart. We're badasses, and we know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what we're wearing and why and when. And so I said, and I have had young interns with me before coming into a locker room with me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you can't come in because I want to protect you a little bit, but in general, professionalism, that matters. I talk about my daughters with this, and if you're wearing something that's cut really low or really short here, then I want to look at you. Sorry, much less the guys. And I'm not into girls. I like men, but I'm going to look at you. And so we all know when we go certain places, and they didn't like that comments. And there are people that said women who were like Sage Steele thinks women get what they deserve and should be raped for wearing. The headlines that came out, Michelle, were devastating to me in every way. But so if I had said anything, if I had said the opposite on any of those three topics, I would still be at ESPN. And I think that's the hypocrisy, because it all begins and ends with diversity of thought. I have a right to feel how I feel as a woman who's been in those locker rooms for almost 3 decades. I have a right as a biracial woman to say what I want about my own experience. And I have a right to say that I don't want to get a shot and I don't believe in mandates while complying. And that's where I have a problem, where people say diversity, but it ends when it's not something that they agree with.